You're watching HFO-TV.
Hi, welcome back to HFO-TV. I'm Greg Frick, partner here at HFO Investment Real Estate. Today I'm talking with attorney Chris Robinson. Chris was admitted to the Oregon State Bar in 1977 and has more than 25 years of experience in property taxation law. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Can you tell us a little bit about your firm and kind of what you do and what you specialize in?
Well, I have my own practice. I have a staff of 4 people that have a background in real estate and law and valuation. And our practice is solely property tax, consulting, and appeals, litigation and administrative appeals. And as you said, I was admitted to the bar in 1977, and in about 1987, my practice solely focused on property tax issues. And so I have actually 2 companies. I have my law practice, which handles all the appeal work in Oregon, and then I have a consulting company called Property Tax Analytics that does work in about 7 different states. And so that keeps us pretty busy.
Oh, I bet. So you do also tax litigation in Washington?
Yes.
Okay. What would be some of the red flags a property manager, owner, our audience is more apartments, in regards to, when they get their tax bills or things they should be looking for as to when they should call you and say, hey, wait a minute, Chris, something doesn't seem right here?
Well, in Oregon and Washington, in Oregon, your notice of value is your tax statement, which you get in October. And that is a good time to look at the real market value and assessed values, and then look at your property performance to see where your net operating income is. And it's a good idea to look at trends. And so if you look at like 2 or 3 years of history, and you stack that net operating income up against, by using a cap rate, market cap rate, and compare that value indication with the real market value on the rolls. There is a misconception, a common misconception, that there's nothing to do in Oregon for a seasoned property because you're not taxed on market value.
Right.
But in high tax rate counties like Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington, that is not true.
Okay.
You should still review the value because there's something in Oregon called compression. And compression occurs when you get a reduction in the market value, still above the assessed value, but it hits a point where it requires the assessor to recalculate the tax, or the county to recalculate the tax based on the old Measure 5 rate, which was $15 per thousand of market value.
Right.
So $5 for schools, $10 for government. So we've been doing the last couple of years, we've done a fair amount of that, and it actually creates a substantial tax savings for the client. In Washington, you get your value change notice. That would be the point in time to really focus on it and do the same thing. And in Washington, you are taxed on market value.
Right.
So every reduction in market value, or every dollar reduction in market value, translates into some property tax savings. Other red flags would be new construction. Here in Oregon, that's called exception value. And so when you build, let's say you build a 40-unit apartment complex, and the assessor will establish a market value for that, and then apply what's called a CPR, or a changed property ratio. And that is designed to bring new construction on in some kind of parity with existing comparable apartments.
Right out of the gate?
Right out of the
gate, okay.
But that is recalculated every year, and it varies from county to county. For example, in Clackamas County, that changed property ratio is around 80% of market value. In Multnomah County, it's about 60% of market value, and comparable in Washington County. So new construction is very important, because once that value is determined and the assessed value is determined by the CPR, unless that's appealed and reduced, it's permanent.
By the time it's assessed, is there like a window of opportunity where once you let it go past that, hey, it's done, that's your assessment?
The deadline for filing with the local board here in Oregon, local boards, is December 31st.
Okay.
So you get your tax statement usually by the third week in October. Your taxes are due in November 15th, and then you have until December 31st to file an appeal with the county board. If you miss that deadline, it's very tough.
What about on new construction when you've got the taxes going? It's not completed for that year, so you get this.
That's a good question.
You get the smaller tax. I mean, a lot of people know it's I'll deal with it when it comes up when I'm completed. Should they be looking at that ahead of time, or
They should be looking at the partial valuation because it's building blocks.
got it? Okay.
So if let's say that first year it's 60% complete and it's a partial assessment and they don't challenge it, the only thing you can challenge the next year is the incremental increase in that market value times that CPR, so that previous year's value and the assessed value from the initial part of that construction, that's already set and not challengeable. So it is important to monitor as you go along, and that brings an important thing in the timing of new construction is if you are going to build something, you'd want to time it as such so that if it's going to be a large project, and it's going to last more than 12 months, you can get a new construction abatement that would exempt the improvements for that year.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that is a very valuable, we're seeing a lot of new projects come out of the ground, and some of those are, between 200 and 300 units, and they're going to take, 12 to 18 months to complete. So that's an important thing to focus on.
When do they file for that? When is that prior to the tax?
The filing deadline for new construction exemptions is April 1st.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we're coming up just 10 days where we've got a stack of files in our office where we're looking at all these new projects and seeing if they qualify and get those applications in.
And that'd be for the tax year of 2013 through. Okay. Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. Is it the same in Washington? Does Washington have the same?
No,
Not at all.
no,
Okay.
they don't offer that program.
Interesting. Okay.
Another red flag would be, and we have these, is that we have some projects that were built that got a 10-year abatement, tax abatement.
Right.
And those have expired or are coming up for expiration. And you've been involved in some of those.
Yes.
And so that's very key. And you shouldn't just wait for that event to happen. There should be some forecasting, some planning, some strategic planning to try to mitigate the impact of that when that day comes. Because when it does expire, it's just like new construction. They're going to value it at market value. They're going to apply the change property ratio for that year, and then that's going to determine your tax base.
So you're trying to do some, like you said, building blocks previous to that year when it comes up to just kind of
want to be looking at it because obviously you're either the owner or if it's on the market, the investor, potential investor is going to want some kind of idea of what's going to happen.
Okay.
And we do that. It's part of one of the things that we do is help do some forecasting or property tax estimates, and that's all they are estimates based upon a range of value possibilities.
And I guess one thing interesting when you brought it before about Oregon, where, like I said, I've had a lot of owners, investors say to me, "Oh, we got our tax statement, the real market values, here it's not really where we think it is, but again, our taxes are based on this assessed value, and there's no call for action, I guess, from that standpoint." You're saying that's probably a mistake.
It's simplistic. It's a simplistic approach to it, and so that's what we do is we'll look, and all we need really is the tax statement.
Okay.
Because the tax statement gives us the breakdown between the education tax and the government tax. We're talking about Oregon. And so we can do the calculations very quickly on what value threshold we would need to meet in order to create compression, and is it realistic?
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's good to know, because like I said, a lot of our investors will think, oh, there's no taxes based on that number. Why am I going to worry about it? So.
Right. I mean, we have seen that not only with multifamily, but we've seen it with all types of commercial properties where we have perhaps out-of-state owner, and they are approaching this exactly as you said. They look at the real market value, and then they look at the assessed value, and they go, "There's nothing to do." But
which brings up an example on the out-of-state owner. We get this asked a lot in Oregon. The taxes are not reassessed on a sale.
Correct.
It's based on what was on the tax roll. Whereas in
Correct.
Washington, that's different.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess there's some legislation possibly that may be coming through that could change that. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's not going to solve the inequities that we have because of Measure 50.
Right.
It will create new inequities. So really probably what they should do is, rather than nibble around the edges of tax reform, is look at a comprehensive program where, there's always the discussion of the sales tax as a third leg of revenue base. So you would have sales tax, income tax, and property tax. But that's, the devil's in the details. And so we'll see. There's several proposals out there right now in the legislature, and we're monitoring it.
Okay. And what do you need for somebody that has a question about taxes on their, multifamily property? So what's the information that you need to get to kind of make a educated decision as to what's the next steps?
It's really straightforward. All we need are the couple of years of operating history,
Okay.
a December rent roll from the previous year, current rent roll, and a copy of the tax statement or the value change notice. And that's, and if there's a building condition report, sometimes people don't tell us, well, we have a $250,000 siding issue.
Right.
It's not reflected in the operating statements, but physical condition of the building is important to know. If there are capital needs that are fast approaching or deferred maintenance, then we want to build that into our analysis. But usually it's just the operating statements, rent rolls, and the tax statements. Right.
Gotcha. Okay. What about, just a curiosity on these failed condo projects that we've been involved with? What's the plan for those from a taxation standpoint?
Many developers or banks that ended up with those projects faced with all the same issue is, as long as that condo plat is in place, then it's going to be valued highest and best use as condominiums. And so if you want to, one way of dealing with that issue is that if the condo plat is really not important to your investment goals,
Right.
then you could vacate the condo plat. That would cause a revaluation as apartments, application of a new CPR, and again, those would be the types of things where we would be consulting with a client to say, is this going to be beneficial or not? In some markets, the condo values might be actually lower than apartment values. We have done quite a few appeals on failed condo projects, and what is the challenge? The challenge there is that typically those failed projects sell in bulk.
Right.
They don't sell as individual. They haven't sold as individual units for a long time. And so, can you use the bulk sale value as an indicator of market value? The court cases aren't very friendly to that concept. Still looking at, since they're individually assessed, you have to come up with individual retail values.
For those comps.
For those condos. Right. So that is a challenge.
Interesting. Now, is that the same in any other big differences between Oregon and Washington if I own in both states?
No, I think on that issue, failed condo project and how they would be valued, I think you'd be facing pretty much the same issues. Value them as condos, and we need individual values, not bulk sale.
Apartments are kind of the hot investment, as we're all
Yes.
involved in. Are we seeing changes on the tax, in Oregon specifically regarding that, where they're pushing up the real market value? Or they, I know we typically would say the counties are usually a year behind kind of in what's going on in the market. I know we had some issues in Vancouver, not issues, but the valuations were continuing
Right.
to go up in 09, in 010,
Right.
and they finally started to come down in 011. It's almost like they're behind 18 to 24 months.
We have had some rather large, I would say, institutional grade or trophy
Yes.
transactions with fairly low cap rates. And historically, the assessor's office hasn't adopted those cap rates in their valuations.
Okay.
Although we are seeing some change there, because as those types of transactions increase, there's more data out there for the assessor, and so they may get more aggressive, because we've seen some new projects where this year where the county used a cap rate of 5. Well, that's pretty low, and you go to another county in the metro area and they'd be using a cap rate of 6.25 or 6.5 for new construction. So a big variance. I think what we're seeing is, it's like in Clackamas County, if you're developing a new project there, the CPR is about 80% of market value. And we've done some forecasting for those projects, and the property taxes on a per unit basis are really astounding.
I mean, we have seen cap rates sub 5 for nice trophy core located properties, and as we get, I think, more data points, it's the same issue appraisers have. As they get more data points, you know, they're going to start making their adjustments.
Right.
09, 010, 11, there wasn't enough data points, so they were just kind of, from an appraisal, having a hard time with valuations. Now that's changed. The question we have is, you know, is that a blip? Not a blip, but as maybe the pendulum starts going the other way.
The question is, are they representative of the market, or are they kind of exceptions to the market? So it certainly would not be appropriate to take a cap rate for a new 200-unit project and apply it to a 35-unit, 20-year-old project.
Right.
So, you know, that's where part of the art comes in, is if the assessor takes an aggressive stance on the cap rate for a new project, and at that point in time it's only 60% leased, you say, wait, you can't do that. You can't, because what you're doing in effect then is establishing a value is stabilized when it's not stabilized.
Okay.
So you've got to boost that cap rate up. And you know, so that becomes part of the negotiation process, is if you're going to value it as stabilized, you have to use a higher cap rate.
Just because your unit's not completed, this is still something to address, because again, it's a building block for when it is completed, where they're going to hit their baseline for valuation.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. Well, anything else that people should be thinking about from a tax standpoint? Oregon, Washington.
Well, I would encourage property managers and portfolio managers, asset managers, to really look at those properties now.
Okay.
There's no reason in Oregon, we know that the assessed value will go up 3% unless it's new construction. And the market value, let's just assume that the market value stays where it is. You can do your analysis right now for 2013. You don't have to wait to get the tax statement.
Okay.
And you could do the same kind of proactive approach in Washington, because the default deadline for appeal in Washington is July 1st.
Gotcha. July 1st. Okay.
July 1. But then all counties up there are converting to an annual revaluation. And so if they issue a value change notice, we call them VCNs, or value change notice, most counties, that creates a 60-day appeal right. And those can come out after July 1.
Okay, so you can get one of those and you have your...
Right, so you have these rolling appeal deadlines for in Washington that can go from July 1 through September and October, when the county issues their value change notice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming in again. The long and short of it is, don't just look at your tax statement and file it off and figure because the real market value is not the taxable value.
That's right.
It is still worth addressing. And then on the new construction, I think that's some very valid points there that need to be looked at. So thank you again.
You're welcome.
Thanks
Pleasure
again for
to be here.
HFO-TV. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching HFO-TV. To learn more about HFO, call or visit our website. See new listings, apartment news, videos, and more when you download our apps at the Android and iPhone markets.